Full stack development is not the same anymore. It has changed a lot, and this is just going to increase over time. The way of measuring skills just completely by the number of programming languages someone knows or the tech stacks they're most familiar with is completely outdated or becoming outdated. A full stack developer today has to know much more than a full stack developer 5 or 10 years ago. But actually the term full stack development is also quite new. 10 years ago nobody was actually talking about that. So this is a trend that's just going to become larger and larger over time. Just before we start, let me explain what a full stack developer actually is. This is someone who knows to work with the front end and back end at the same time. So someone who can build real full applications, including the design of the application and the functionality behind it. So someone who knows, for example, JavaScript and React and Node.js or Python. But in order to survive in today's world and to excel and to be in the top 1 or 10% of software engineers, you need to know the following 4 things. This is front-end development, back-end development, cloud, hosting and server infrastructure, and marketing. Those 4 things. So let me start with front-end development. This is probably something you should start with. That should be at the beginning of your path. You should start with front-end development for a reason that you can see some progress, that you get familiar with how things work, how some functions work, what are loops, how all those core fundamentals of software development work before you continue. And you can also see what you're creating and what you're building and how it's looking like. That's the reason you should start with front-end development. So set that, what should you learn? Maybe today you shouldn't just learn JavaScript and stick with plain old JavaScript and HTML. You should learn a framework. You could pick React or you could pick Angular and learn JavaScript on the way while learning those frameworks. Maybe it would be better to start with React because it is simpler and easier to learn, and then maybe migrate to Angular. Both are pretty much popular, the same. So by this way you're going to learn CSS, HTML and JavaScript, but inside of a framework, because if you go tomorrow and find a job, nobody is going to, at least today, not anymore, going to program in plain JavaScript. Of course, there are some old websites that probably do this, but the future is definitely going towards JavaScript frameworks. The next thing, after you're familiar with some front-end things, is the backend. You should create a backend for your app that you're currently creating. So for that, you should learn maybe Node.js because it is the most similar to JavaScript, and later extend to Python, for example. Those two are one of the most popular programming languages for the backend. Java is of course as popular as Python and Node.js, but I would suggest you to start with those two and maybe later move to Java, because you're going to get the most out of it. You're going to cover the most types of applications and the most types of jobs by learning Node and Python for the backend. And you will also understand how you can expand to other different programming languages after that. The next thing which sets you already apart from most software engineers is knowing some either cloud architecture, some cloud technologies like AWS, Google Cloud, IBM, knowing how to host websites, how to configure servers, how to set up DNS servers and so on. Like, those things are quite complex, but there are a lot of tools out there that make this process easier. For example, you don't have to create your own email service. You could just use AWS simple emailing service. So this is where you should head into. You should try to host your front ends, back ends. You should look into security, routing, how to get HTTPS for your website, how to add caching to your website, and learn everything around that. Not just how to build your product, but how to host, how to maintain, and how to create an infrastructure around your product. The next thing, and don't underestimate this, is marketing. A lot of people are just going to assume, okay, if I'm great at this backend language, everyone's gonna admire me and everyone's gonna think, okay, I'm awesome at this, I don't need to know anything else. But most people want more, if you want to be in a position where you make decisions, or you want one day to be maybe in a management level position, or you want to understand where company is doing it all, which most people want, you should also learn marketing. You should learn why you're building some features, how much time those features cost, if you should use a standard solution, if you should develop a custom solution. How are we going to create distribution channels for our product? This will set you apart from 99% of developers. I know this maybe sounds, I don't want to learn this stuff, I just want to learn programming, I want to solve problems. But you need to understand the background behind it, why you're building stuff, how you're going to build it. And this is where the future is going. Like, the future is not going to look like every company is creating their own entire service. Most companies are heading in the direction of using standard services. And every company out there will rather pay $100 per month to use some standard service and to maybe create custom solutions on top of that, instead of giving $20,000 to 2 developers to develop something from scratch. So this is where the industry is heading, and this is what you need to prepare for in the future. So as you can see, you start small. On the way, you learn new technologies, you learn how they interact with each other, you learn how to combine them, you learn. And this maybe sounds pretty complex, but it's not. It's actually making your life easier. It's just that you have more knowledge of a lot more things, but in the end, you don't need to go that deep into those things, which in the end doesn't make software engineering harder or easier. It pretty much stays the same. It is just on a new abstraction level. And as I have already mentioned, the best way to learn programming is by building projects, by building out real-life projects, following those steps I have just told you. You can look at my YouTube series consisting of 32 videos being uploaded every week on how to create an app, where I exactly go into those things, from getting an idea, building everything around it, deciding what architecture, what tools to use, also programming those tools out and using them in the end. So if this is something interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel to follow along with this series. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every view. So thank you and have a nice one.